This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back to the third hour of our program. Thom Hartmann here with you. Kathy Kelly on the line with us. She is a founding member of Voices in the Wilderness, currently the coordinator of Voices for Creative Nonviolence, VCNV, active with Afghan Peace Volunteers. OurJourneyToSmile.com is the website. Her latest article is Courage for Peace, Not for War in Afghanistan. The website, vcnv.org, and you can tweet her at info_from_VCNV. Kathy, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Tom. Thanks for the invitation.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you being here with us. Tell us about what the situation is in Afghanistan right now.
Well, when I go there, Tom, I stay with a group of older teens in a working-class neighborhood of Afghanistan. And for them, the situation looks very, very bleak. Unemployment is high. The last time that I was there in April, there were 3 youngsters who went back to be with their families for funerals. And the funerals were because their fathers, brothers, uncles can't find work apart from working with the Afghan security forces or some kind of policing job. And so they've had many deaths in their families because of people not having any other job that they can do. Monies just aren't available for what Afghanistan is sort of naturally suited for. It's an agricultural economy, but unfortunately the opium trade has become industrial strength and is, they are now exporting more opium than any other country in the world. And of course it's dangerous because there are random explosions, and the Taliban now control many of the most populated areas of Afghanistan, and certainly a third of the country, and they also control roadways, so it's difficult for the youngsters to go by vehicle to visit their families. And, you know, if the United States Embassy people come to Afghanistan, they land in the airport and they take a helicopter for the 15-minute car ride that would otherwise be to go to their embassy offices, because it's considered to be such an insecure country. But meanwhile, people who fled Afghanistan are being forced back, and this is terrible because they've already got sprawling, huge refugee camps where people don't have water, they don't have food, they don't have jobs, they don't even have latrines. And 1.8 million people are likely to be forced back into Afghanistan from Iran, from Pakistan, and from Europe. And they already have 1.5 million people living as what they call internally displaced people in refugee camps.
Essentially. Yeah. We're talking with Kathy Kelly, a founder member of Voices in the Wilderness and coordinator of Voices for Creative Nonviolence, VCNV. Kathy, when George W. Bush decided to bomb Afghanistan, the leader of the Taliban, which was the government of Afghanistan at that time, Mullah Omar, according to a story I read in the Washington Post, just before the bombing started, said, we will arrest Osama bin Laden and send him to a third country. We won't send him to the United States, but we'll send him to a third country for prosecution under, international war crimes tribunals or whatever. Just provide us with some evidence that we can use to make this happen. And George W. Bush's response was, no, thanks, I'd rather bomb your country. At that point in time, Afghanistan was the second poorest country in the world, just above Burkina Faso, as I recall. They had an annual GDP of $2 billion for the entire country. And we have spent well over $1 trillion now in this country. If we had simply given them that money, they would be, a fully modern, industrialized country. Back 6-7 years ago, I was in New York City at a talk radio convention, and General Stanley McChrystal was there. And at the time, he was running things in Afghanistan. And I said, what are we going to do there? How's this going to work? And he said, well, we can't kill our way to victory. But it seems like Donald Trump has decided that we can kill our way to victory, and that we're doing this in this. I mean, it's crazy that Bush did this in the first place, in my opinion. And now look at the kind of hell we've unleashed on this country. I'm not sure that there's a specific question there, but feel free to grab hold of any part of that rant and correct me if I'm wrong on any of it.
Well, then I guess we have to wonder who does benefit.
Right.
And then, there's a little lineup there, isn't there? Because the military contractors that send the weapons and experiment with weapons find benefits. The generals who get promotions or the people who pick up extra points in their businesses find benefits. There are benefits to a very, very corrupt network within Afghanistan. Afghanistan now ranks as one of the most corrupt countries in the world. But certainly the people who are ordinary people who've been displaced from their land or had to flee fighting, who can't get water, who can't get food, who cope with disease and don't have health care, they're not benefiting at all. And they, of course, then start to wonder, well, why does the United States want to be yet another invading force in our country? And they see these huge military bases, and there are always trucks full of food and fuel and water and ammunition going into those bases. And actually the Taliban benefit from that because they charge money for every truck of fuel, carrying fuel, that goes into a U.S. base. And so they get $1,500 per truck. Well, sometimes the United States has bought in enormous numbers of trucks. And for every soldier that's in Afghanistan, the price right now is about $1 million per year. So who benefits from that rather large amount? If there's a surge, some people will make a profit.
Yeah.
But certainly not the soldiers themselves. I mean, they've come back traumatized. The rates of suicide amongst female soldiers that have gone off to Afghanistan and Iraq are twice as high as that of women normally in the United States. And so many lives have been altered. People will be maimed or mangled, or their psyches ruined forever. So it seems as though the generals, particularly now General Mattis, the general in charge, General Nicholson, they don't want to say, well, we've gone down in defeat and disgrace. But
they don't want to do like Vietnam.
They want to say to China and to Russia, we're not going anywhere. We're going to keep these bases here as a way of signaling that we are in your neighborhood, in your area, and we can bring in massive firepower.
How is this different from Vietnam circa 1973?
Well, of course, in 1973, if you turned down the television screen, you saw the body bags coming back from Vietnam.
Right.
You saw the results of a very, very unpopular draft, and people said, no, we don't want to put up with this. But I guess our question must become, why don't we care about Afghanistan? It's like a silent war or a forgotten war. And sometimes people even think, and this is horrible, but they think it's a humanitarian war. It's been marketed, it's been sold, and then we're not to ask too many questions. And quite honestly, I don't think many people within the media, the mainstream media, are interested in asking very probing or difficult questions. They don't present to people the desperation of people who've been displaced from their land and are living in refugee camps in squalor and whose children are the only ones who can earn an income. They don't present people who literally bury their children who've frozen to death over the harsh winters. And so, I mean, I could introduce all kinds of media people to widows who live up on the mountainsides without any access to water, to little kids who long to go to school and are worried that they're going to get pulled into human trafficking and drugs and gangs. I could introduce them to these very altruistic, idealistic young teenagers. And so this is a nation of 30 million people, and we've begun to see it as a sort of a problem or a constant, perpetual war.
Wow. So, Kathy Kelly, you've been there many times to Afghanistan. You're as familiar with the country as anybody I know. What do you think we should do?
Well, I think we should pay reparations. We should pay reparations for the suffering caused. And I mean, I know the economy here is not able to sustain huge amounts of money for repairing other countries very easily. But when you think about it, the United States during the last surge of troops was spending $2 billion per week to maintain the United States military presence. And it's hard to do the number crunching, but to restore the agricultural infrastructure in Afghanistan, that would mean clearing out the irrigation systems, replenishing the flocks, planting saplings all over the mountainsides. This would cost somewhere in the vicinity of $36 to $46 billion. Well, do the math: $2 billion a week for United States military presence within 24 weeks. The United States could really.
So we should just do a Marshall Plan, basically.
Well, we've spent much more than the Marshall Plan already, but it went into pockets of people who were corrupt and smart enough to game the system.
Right, and which includes the defense contractors here in Washington, D.C., in my opinion. Are there any allies in Congress for your perspective?
Well, I think Congressman Jones doesn't want to see the war in Afghanistan continue.
Walter Jones?
Yeah, and Barbara Lee has been very, very strong since the beginning, saying that this is a foolish.
She was the only vote against the invasion.
Yeah, what a remarkable woman, huh?
Yeah.
And I think part of the problem is there aren't bills that you can lobby around. The money has largely come from the Overseas Contingency Development Fund. And so there's not a resolution that goes up or down, at least with regard to Iraq. There were supplemental spending bills, and you could get your hands on the bill and march into your congressperson's office and say, you're going to be for this or against it, and we're not going to leave until you tell us you're going to be against it. But It's been very unwieldy to even try to educate or do outreach around the war in Afghanistan. And, not so many people go there. And to be honest, it becomes less safe for those who welcome you. For those of us in the who are friends with the Afghan Peace Volunteers to go over there, we certainly don't want to jeopardize their safety. And the corruption is such, and the banks are so unusable that, in a way, the only way you can bring support to them is to show up in person.
Right, and bring cash, kind of thing. So that's it's remarkable the work that we have to do to undo the damage when George W. Bush opened the gates of hell for, in my opinion, purely political purposes. Kathy Kelly, founding member of Voices in the Wilderness, currently coordinator of Voices for Creative Nonviolence, VCNV.org is the website. Active with the Afghan Peace Volunteers, ourjourneytosmile.com. And Kathy, thanks so much.
Thank you for this time with you. Bye-bye now.
Great talking. Bye-bye.